America, my name is Osei-Frimpong, and you are watching this week's edition of The Black Athenians. And today we're going to talk about staying put. There's been a lot of talk in the media about how real freedom means the right to mobility. You can open borders, you can go and then come back and go and come back and move to where you want to if you don't want to. And that's what freedom means. But sometimes freedom means the ability to stay put. Community intact. That means I don't want to run anywhere. My mom, I always say, my mom was born in South Carolina. She came out with the Great Migration. Moved to California. Now I was raised in California. And then now I'm priced out of California and I moved and I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. And now I'm staying put. I'm not moving because I think freedom means the ability to stay put and actually make plans. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that means and what that entails and how black communities especially aren't allowed to stay put in the way that white communities are. And when you can't stay put, you can't build, you can't make plans, you can't make generational plans. Anyway, all right, so you ready for the intro? Marcus, hit the beat.
To the beat, yo.
Yeah. Sound good to me. Never change the ways for the world or the government. If I was the president, then I would state facts. You leave it up to me, I paint the White House black and ain't no future in your front.
All right, so sometimes freedom means the right to stay put. So right now we have narratives in the community that when you escape the ghetto, when you get out, you win. Somehow escaping the community you grew up in is win. But that's not real freedom, because then you escape out to the wolves in the suburbs. And real freedom means like the place you grew up in would actually be nice. It wasn't maybe nice when you started, but then by the time you finished high school or whatever, it became nice. It's the kind of place you want to stay. It has the amenity. That's what real freedom is. Because you have your community there and you can have free relationships with other people that you've grown up with and you've cultivated. You shouldn't have to move out of the hood in order to succeed. People don't talk about white people growing up in the suburbs saying they move out of the suburbs in order to succeed. No. Well, that's complicated for different reasons. But freedom is the ability sometimes to stay put, especially for people like us that's always been mobilizing. Give me a picture of there's a great picture of Tulsa under bombs. You might have to find it on Google. But the Tulsa bombing and, all that. So freedom is the ability to stay put. And Yvette Carnell, you might know Yvette Carnell and I worked for a while together. She told this great story about how one of her buddies in Decatur, she grew up in Decatur, one of her buddies in Decatur, if you know anything about Decatur, Georgia, the pricing for housing has gone up dramatically in the last, say, 20 years or 30 years. And one of her friends is black, lives in Decatur. The property taxes were going up and up and up, but wages were staying the same. And so every year she'd have to call the tax assessor's office and say, like, look, I'm not going to be able to get taxes to you this year. It's hard, but can we work something out? And the tax assessor says, yeah, we can work something out. You can pay in installments or just pay a little bit later. And then so every year they did this dance. They did this dance where she would get her taxes postponed, but like it wasn't that big of a deal. And then a few years ago, she tried to do the same thing to a tax assessor, and it was different. The tax assessor was talking about taking her out of her house because, you know what? White people wanted that land. So it was cool. You thought she owned the house. The house was supposed to be paid off. But that didn't mean anything because she couldn't pay taxes. And white people wanted that land. So now the flexibility she had with the tax assessors was not happening anymore. So it wasn't even about ownership. People say like ownership matters. What you need is to have ownership. And if you have ownership, you win. But no. She owned the house. She needed that flexibility, that familiarity, that like I was raised here. My family bought this house. You're not really going to kick me out over, a grand in taxes that I can pay in Tuesday if you let me go today. So, but no, what happened was in Decatur now, white people want that land. And so the tax assessor got the notice that white people called. They want their land back. And so they took it. They took it. And so that's the narrative. That's the narrative. Even if we own things. Yeah, give me the picture of Tulsa. These people owned their stores and their land. It didn't matter. This was Black Wall Street. People say, oh, well, you know, we had Black Wall Street. Yeah, we did have Black Wall Street. And then white people wanted it. And apparently, you talk to someone whose grandparents were in that fight, like the black community was holding on a while, and then the planes came. We were doing fine until the white people brought their bombs, and that was a problem. So we were in it until the bombs happened. So ownership doesn't mean anything unless it's recognized, and it won't be recognized until we have a culture of actual black power. But that's a different show. What I'm saying right now is we need to talk about the right not just to own stuff, but to be able to stay put. Give me Forsyth County too. I don't know where I'm sure you can find something on Google about Forsyth County, about them running Negroes out. So we have a narrative that says that it's okay to run black people out, and it's okay for black people to themselves run themselves out. And let me make a distinction between the notion that a success means escaping your community versus white flight. White flight, they take the community institutions with them and then make community institutions in the suburbs. Like good, strong, funded community institutions. They take them with them. Sometimes they even take their tax dollars with them, and it sets up the church, the schools, all that stuff. They take the whole economy with them, the community infrastructure with them, and also, like I said, the tax dollars, because now you have a colonial relationships where people will come in, make all the money in the city, and then drive back out and pay taxes out in the suburbs. So like that sets up a kind of neo-colonial relationship where you go in, take the gold, take the gold back out, and spend the gold in your home country. So that's not black escape. Black escape is just escape because we don't have the disposable cash to recreate the community infrastructure. So a real right to stay, means a right to stay with community infrastructure intact, right? So I'm going to show you a picture of how they get rid of black people. They can't do it with the Klan riders anymore like they did in Forsyth. Do you have that picture of Forsyth?
Forsyth. Give me just a sec.
All right. So they don't, in Forsyth County, it's famous in Georgia because it's a well-documented, like just we're tired of black people staying here, so we just want to make a white county, so let's just... Yeah, I'll move the mic a little bit closer. There you go. So in Forsyth County, it's known that they just got tired of black people there, so they called in the Klan got rid of the black people, and all the black people just run out.
So yeah, the image is the poster that they were carrying during one of the protests. Racial purity is Forsyth's security.
Yeah, and also, yeah, blow it up over my face just to know what we're dealing with. That is not, and they're talking about their housing values too, because if you get rid of Negroes, your housing goes up. So there's a rational response to chase us the heck out of town, but we're not going anywhere anymore. By the way, the Negroes they chased out of Forsyth, they stayed out. Like they chased them out in 21, and I don't think they've been back. I don't think. Yeah. I don't think they.
Forsyth is officially still one of those towns that rolls up its streets at midnight. It's after dark. One of the towns they talk about when we talk about in the South. Sundown town. Yeah. Forsyth is still a sundown town.
And now they have to keep their property value up. So, all right, so you can get rid of that. So they chased out all the black people. And I think when they chased them out, they were like a fifth of the population, either 25% or maybe even a third of the population. Anyway, they chased them out, and they haven't come back yet because they chased them out like for serious. So what I'm talking about is our right to stay put with community institutions intact. And I started thinking about this because I lived in Chicago a few years ago when they closed. Give me the Chicago school closings. They closed 53 public schools. This is under your first black president and his Secretary of Education, Arnie Duncan. Closed 53 public schools in primarily black neighborhoods.
Wasn't it also with their buddy Rahm Emanuel?
With Rahm Emanuel. Democrats all the way down. Democrats all the way down are like, we still got to get rid of these Negroes. 53 public schools in Chicago, including the public school Sasha and Malia would have gone to had they gone to public school. But Sasha and Malia were never going to go to public school because they aren't about too many black people. No. No, they're poor too. No. We'll go to Sidwell Friends. No, well, they were at the lab school, which is, I think, was like, at that time, like $30,000 each. Maybe with a price break. I think the faculty members get a price break, so it's $15,000 each.
Ooh, only $15,000.
Yeah, to flee Negroes. It's a bargain. So anyway, Chicago closed 53 schools, and that's all a strategy. And they also closed like neighborhood clinics, and it's all a strategy to get rid of black people. Because if you starve them of services, then they start moving out into the inner suburbs and where they are. There are lots of ways, there are lots of strategies to rid your town of black people. And Chicago wanted to become an international town that boasted of things, including few Negroes. So that's one of the strategies you use if you want to rid your town of black people, start getting rid of services. So we not only need a plan to stay, also, give me the flint, the water flint. Not only do I want a plan to stay, I want to be able to stay with the community intact and clean water. Do I not have one? It doesn't. All right. So everybody knows Flint doesn't have clean water. So that doesn't, like, I shouldn't be chased out of Flint for like wanting my kid to drink unleaded water. That I shouldn't have to deal with that. I want to be able to stay with all of my community infrastructure intact. And I'll tell you like a more like sentimental version. I was talking to this cat in Richmond, Virginia, and when they desegregated schools in Richmond, they closed a lot of the black schools, but his dad had gone to one of these black schools, and his dad had broken school records at this black school. And he says, it's kind of sad because I kind of wanted to go back to the school and see my dad's record, but they had it all. They had the trophies and all that stuff. It was like locked in it was in some like city storage basement because they closed down the school. So like in order for us to have a real right to stay and to make plans and to like live our lives, that means we need some sort of community stability so that if you break a high school record, like your kid who might go to that same high school can see it. Your high school won't get closed down. You're like, that's what community stability means. That's what being able to make plans mean. That's what self-determination means. Because what self-determination means is I get to make myself who I am. And then the world will recognize it and it'll be stable. If you are always moving, you don't ever get to make yourself who you are. For example, give me the 1980 Olympics people. When I say that freedom entails being able to self-determine yourself, to plan, and through your own self-activity, be able to make yourself who you are, I'm talking...
Is that this one?
Yeah, that's that one. I think it's important to think about this in terms of, say, the people who plan to go to the 1980 Olympics, right? So in the 1980 Olympics, the U.S. boycotted because we're in the middle of the Cold War. But there are a lot of U.S. athletes who, from 8 years old to 28 years old, like had planned that the 1980 Olympics were going to be their Olympics. So they organized their life around making it to the 1980 Olympics. And then for reasons, they didn't get to go. So whether you're for or against a boycott, you have to understand the structure of what that destabilized for the athletes who had actually organized their life to determine themselves as Olympic athletes, to have that instability injected into their life. That's the instability that black people just live with. So when you talk about black people not being able to make plans, it's because our lives are not stable in the way that our plans are honored, that the conditions of our plans are actually attained and sustained. And that matters. That matters. And you think you can get away with that with ownership. But like I said before, ask the people who owned businesses in Black Wall Street how that worked out. Ask the people who owned houses in Decatur. Yvette's friend who owned a house in Decatur.
But
how that worked
Army,
out. Yes.
That would never happen in today's environment. Oh, hold on.
No, when white people want their land back, ask anybody. We talk, like I'm in Athens, Georgia. I hear all the time about like, my parents used to own a house down in this. Now the university owns that land. My grandparents used to own a little house over this. Now like this big apartment complex owns the land.
Or, like you live in a nice mixed community. Property values are just over $150,000, and as a developer decides he's going to build $300,000 retirement homes right behind you, and people are confused why that would concern you.
Yeah, because your wages have not moved up, or if you're older, you're on a fixed income. So
we just had that issue very much locally.
Yeah,
a developer building 300,000 retirement homes. Who retires in Athens, Georgia? With $300,000
in Athens, Georgia. I'm thinking it's not black people from Athens, Georgia.
Certainly,
it's like people who made their money in New Jersey or Washington D.C. or California and now sold their New Jersey apartment somewhere cold.
And they think that $300,000 is like, oh, that's not a big deal at all.
Yeah. They were chased out. It'd be like people like my mom, people who were chased out left during the Great Migration and then come back. People like your Aunt Esther,
Regina,
yeah. Chased out, and then want to come back home to the South, but still, that's not enough. That's not enough. Although, if you're black and are looking for a place to make moves, Athens, Georgia, welcome home. We'll do it together. Because I'm not moving. I'm not moving. I'm going to be yapping, but I am not moving, and so this mountain's going to have to come to me, and that means black people getting a fair share of the $8.5 billion GDP. That Athens produces. So what does it mean to have a right to stay? It means to be able to make plans. It means to be able to stay with your community intact. That means stay and still have clean water. That means, and that's all entailed in self-determination. To be able to make yourself what you are, but you can't make yourself what you are if you're always moving and are always destabilized. You can't make plans. So I want black people to be able to make plans. In order for black people to be able to make plans, we need to start talking about the right to stay. And we need to start talking about how we secure that right. It's not necessarily merely through ownership. We like to think it is, but it's not merely through ownership if your claims aren't recognized. I want to say that this is especially true for the people in Atlanta. A lot of people displaced, not just during the Olympics, but I'm talking about through this last stadium.
Oh, yeah.
Did you hear about that?
Yeah, no.
What went down?
I don't remember the exact story because I don't look at Atlanta a lot.
I don't. Yeah,
but I do definitely during the Olympics they tore down.
You got to go
housing, low income housing to build everything for the Olympics.
Right.
So I mean that was a big deal.
The first, like pretty much if you're in a black neighborhood, you're just a target for eminent domain. Anytime
and I think the problem is sometimes people don't always recognize it for what it is. Right. Like, oh, let's put a greenway through this nice low-income neighborhood so that they have a path to walk and enjoy like the rest of the community.
No, what they need is jobs.
Yes, bike lanes. Like.
I mean, I think all that stuff's great, but for black people, they need good jobs at fair wages. Good jobs at fair wages. So you have an agenda that's for their land that's not set by them. And that's going to cause problems. That's going to cause problems in Athens, and it's not just Athens. If these problems are happening in Athens, I'm sure they're happening in Gainesville. I'm sure they're happening in Richmond, Virginia. I'm sure they're even happening in St. Louis, in New York. We need to talk about it. Black people have been priced out of San Francisco and New York. So,
but didn't San Francisco just get a minority mayor?
Yeah. It did. It got a black face in high place. And one of the costs of doing business, if you're going to be that black face in a high place, is don't talk about keeping poor black people in your municipality.
And let's be clear. Like, I need people to really define poor. When you hear a politician talking about poor people or low income, ask them what that income number is. Because as we are in a town that has a affordable housing problem, several people thought $300,000 retirement homes was part of that initiative.
Mixed income. Yeah.
That's
just regular middle class, right? That's what happens when black people aren't in the room. No, like that's not. Yeah, I'm going to do a whole show on poverty and how that on the history of the poverty index. It's actually fascinating. I'm doing some reading on it right now. I'll do a whole show on it, not next week, but maybe the week after. But we need to talk about securing people's dreams and aspirations and their ability for having their plans to be honored. And that also means that entails securing a right to stay put with community intact, with clean water, right? With a school that's, the school you grew up in, or a better school, but in the neighborhood. It doesn't mean the right to escape. And there's stakes to that. And I think a lot of people get confused on this score, and I think that's too bad. We need to talk about what instituting instability into the black community means. And someone actually mentioned this before. I was talking to a teacher. So I noticed it first in Berkeley, but you talk to young black kids now, they don't talk about where they live or where their home is. They talk about where they stay. Because our homes have been so destabilized that you might stay one place now and then might stay with someone else in the next month. And that's just on a mass level, we don't have homes anymore. We just have places we stay. I stay at.
I was thinking about this just recently. I was talking to someone about decorating my apartment. I'm so not used to it being my space alone, right, that it takes so much thought for me to figure out hold on. I can actually put things up here the way I want. I don't have to check with anybody about where this appliance goes. That's
a security.
That's
a security that a lot of people will never know. There are two things that prompted me to think about this show. The first was my favorite Indian restaurant is leaving downtown Athens because at the end of their lease, the people who own the plot of land decided that they want to put something else there. And so they've been there for 12 years, and they were like, all right, you can go now.
Once again, which seems very silly because nothing else has lasted there 12 years in the 20-something plus years I've been in this town.
Anyway, they want to try to put something else there. And so they're like, all right, your lease is up. You can go. And so just the instability of that. You've been there 12 years doesn't mean anything.
But you did win on that one.
You did win.
You did.
Oh, yeah. Well, now they're opening up closer to my house. So, so selfishly, I won. The second big thing is, especially, this is in Athens, Georgia, but like I said, I think it's true everywhere around. They're doing some funny things with HUD and Section 8 housing. And it's all kind of calibrated to get rid of black people and poor black people. And since in the South, those two communities are kind of coextensive, we have to talk about the people who are being moved and who are expected to be moved, what their right to stay is. All right, so in Athens, it's Bethel Homes or Athens Gardens, places that are slated informally or formally to start closing, and with ambiguous plans of what happens to those families. And if you're in that situation right now, what kind of plans can you make? What kind of truth can you tell to your kids about where they're going to be in 5 years? And in the black community, we always say, well, I guess the plan is to get to heaven. So we don't need justice on this land, but I want to actually I want some stability so we can make a life for ourselves here in this. I want a theology that actually asks us to be adequate to our experience of oppression here in this land. So yeah, Athens has a plan to reduce its poverty rate by reducing its black rate. And I have a problem with that because right now the town is about 30% black and about a third poor, and I think I want to reduce the poverty rate but keep that 30%, keep the black rate. And that is not the current plan, and I have a problem with that. So we need to talk about these people's rights to stay because they've been here for generations, and they should be able to raise their kids here and stably without being told what to do. This happened with another housing community in town. And what happens is, same thing that happens when the schools close. we get a plan that's not our plan, but somebody else's plan, and then we say, well, I guess it's good enough because we know what's going to happen anyway. And that's what happens when you don't have power. You know it's going to happen anyway. The train is coming. So you just tell yourself some story about how it's good enough. And you have it sometimes laundered through religion. That's good enough now because I'll be able to get to my hereafter, wherever I am. But that's no way to build. That's no way to build whole communities. That's no way to live.
That's basically saying it'll get better when you die.
We built a whole theology around it'll get better when you die. And then the opposite of that theology is prosperity gospel that says, well, you can win, but not as a community, but as an individual come up. You can win if you want to be one of the individual blessed. You got to leave the rest of those Negroes behind.
I'm holding my breath not to say any names. I'm like, no. But if you live in a poor community and your church looks like a grand temple, who are you serving?
Who are you serving?
Like who?
Who are you serving? Yeah, and there's still lead in the water, and people are still, don't have the teachers they should have. So what I want us to start talking about a right to stay. And we could fold it into the national discourse about open borders and the right to leave and move and mobility as a right, but also the right to stay, the right to stay with your community intact so that you can make plans in order to determine yourself, to make yourself the kind of person you want to be. And that entails a sort of stability, a quality of stability that we don't talk about as much as we should, and call that freedom. Because you're not free if you can't make plans to make yourself who you are, who you want to be. Like, that's not freedom. Freedom means I aspire to be something and then I can work towards being it and then become it. You can't do that if you're always running. You can't do that. Especially, you can't do that if you're always running, if you have to compete with people who don't have to run. Right? This is the problem. People talk about black dropout rates in college. Well, because our lives are more unstable. People talk about how black students in the U.S. do on the Marshmallow Test, where like you're rewarded extra for being able to.
I remember this test. My sister and I have talked about this. Yeah. The idea being that you put one marshmallow in front of them, and you tell them, if you wait 20 minutes, I'll give you a second one. Well, notoriously, black kids who take this test fail because they know they can't count on that second one being there.
Right. Their lives are fundamentally more unstable. And I think it's interesting because they did the same test in Africa, and the kids perform like American white kids.
Yeah.
Because there's just more community stability. So we have to talk about, even at the more destitution, but still more stable destitution. Like, in a way.
I mean, we even talked about this with events where, we were giving out large gift certificates, and someone asked me, they're like, why are the gift certificates so big for these kids? I'm like, because these kids are going back to households that have needs. And I hope with a larger gift certificate, they're not going to get everything they want, but maybe they'll get that one snack they like. But mostly that gift certificate is designed to go back and help that family with things they need.
Right. All right. So in terms of helping black communities, we need to be very suspicious of notions of success being tied to escape and not stability. So on this show, I'm going to talk a lot about stable jobs, the need to secure employment, and that's why the Federal Job Guarantee is such a great program. I need to secure employment. I need to secure the means to live where you're going to live. And also have everything around you be secure too. Because if you're one secure person, there's no one person stability. That's not what stability looks like. You can't be the one person who's got money in a church where everyone's poor, or one person who's got money in a neighborhood where everyone's broke. Because that's not stable. You can be that person, but it's a heroic existence because the place isn't stable. You're just always going to be filling in gaps. So we need to talk about the conditions for stability and how those conditions for stability are a condition for real freedom, a more robust freedom not just not being in chains. I need to be able to make plans and have my plans be honored and respected by the world around me. That's not that foreign of a concept for a lot of non-black America. But we don't have homes. We have places we stay. We don't have jobs. We got hustles. We don't have good union jobs. We got hustles. We don't have homes. We have places we stay from time to time. And that's a problem, and that's something we need to address politically, because if you try to do it as an individual, you're not sustaining the community. And that's where all of these goods, like those are the kinds of goods that we're talking about. Real wealth isn't an individual property. It's a property of communities. It's not so much what's in your bank account. It's in, the bank accounts of the people who are at your wedding. Or if you could pay for a wedding versus like have to go to a loan for it. People at your funeral, and whether you can pay for your funeral versus the people who had to go into a loan. And there are a lot of black people who do have to go into a loan to pay for, bereavement services. So that's the show. A few things I want to talk about. I should do this at the beginning. Look, we have a black-owned union print shop in Athens, Georgia. I'll say this again, a black-owned and run union print shop. So anybody who's watching this in Athens or the area who needs their printing done, we don't do it's not a screenshot, or we don't do t-shirts and stuff, but just...
Yet.
Really? Okay. My man.
I know how. I just don't have the equipment.
So we need to capitalize. So we need, if you support unions, you need to be going at
Haven Business Services.
Give me the bug, and give me a telephone number too. Oh. Yeah. All right. So if you are using, I'll name names. If you're using Belgian printer, stop and use Haven Business Services instead, because Haven Business Services is a union print shop and it's black run, and Belgian is neither. So you don't have to give them their money. Give your money to Haven Business Services instead. And that's important to me because this show is in partnership with Haven Business Services to produce our newsletter, the hard newsletter that's actually going out, that has a lot of the insights we talk about on this show, but out to the people. So
yeah. You can reach Haven Business Services at 706-850-3317.
Yes. So if you have your print needs for your church programs or flyers for your next gigs or posters for whatever, talk to Haven Business Services.
Or manuals for your next training session.
Manuals for your next training sessions. We have a union print shop that's black owned. It will be sustained with your continued patronage. There's no need to give your money to Athens Printing Company or Bell Jeans or any of those other places. Use Haven Business Services instead. Also, if you like anything I'm doing, the show doesn't cost. It doesn't pay for itself. I need to pay rent for the space and equipment, and this newsletter. There are costs, and now I have union employees. So like Matthew's now a union employee. I'll have to tell him that.
Yes. By the way, point of note. Yeah. For all you in the chat who are wondering, Matthew will be back soon. Matthew will be back. And a union employee when he comes back.
He'll be a union employee when he gets back. So in order to pay for Matthew's pension, I'm going to need you to go to funkyacademic.com and become a member at $5.15 or $50 a month. And some of you can pay $50 a month. So go ahead and do it, because this is growing and it's coming. And I want to thank you for your time. Tell your friends. Email this show to your listserv, because people don't talk about the right to stay enough, and I think this will promote a good discussion in the community and outside of the community. Anyone who's in housing, anyone who cares about housing, anyone who cares about dreams, anyone who cares about freedom and self-determination, go ahead and email this show to them, because I think we clarified a lot of debates that we don't talk about enough about what freedom looks like and how you need to be able to make plans in a stable condition in order to actually to be self-determining. And what are the conditions that entails? And if you want to support the work I'm doing, go to thefunkyacademic.com, sign up to be a member. Almost breaking even, but still not quite. So I'm doing this out of the goodness of my heart, which I have a big heart, that's fine. But I'd also like to break even sometime in calendar 18. Tell your friends, watch this with your book club, talk about it. Peace.